Good morning, good afternoon, exactly. Welcome to our Lunch and Learn for January. As you know, we have done many of these before during the pandemic, and we have a couple of rules. I've muted everyone just so that we can make sure that we can hear our speaker. And just a few other housekeeping things. If you haven't been on a Zoom call for a while, just take a moment to find your chat box. On your screen, it could be at the bottom for some people. And if you have any questions, please put them in as we're going along, and we'll address them when it's appropriate after our speaker has finished. We want to thank our sponsor, who's been very kind to us throughout for the last couple of years, People's United Bank, for sponsoring our in-person as well as our virtual lunch and learns. And for some of you who don't know, my name is Stephanie Gotthard, and I'm the new executive director for the Huntington Historical Society. The society was founded in 1903, and we work to preserve and share the history of Huntington. And I'm going to introduce our speaker for today. Very exciting to have Ron with us. Ron was born and raised in Huntington, and he's been involved with the Masonic Temple, which he's going to be speaking today about for 18 years. Ron is the chairperson. She's the chairperson of trustees of the
chairman of trustees.
The chairman of trustees of the Jephtha Masonic Lodge in Huntington, and he's also the Masonic District Historian for Nassau and Suffolk. And by day, his day job is a project manager. So we're very happy to have Ron here with us to speak on his book, The Long Island Freemasons. And I'm going to turn it over to Ron. And again, we're so happy for him to be with us, native of Huntington, and we're very happy that we've had sponsorship from People's United Bank for the past few years for these lunch and learns. So thank you, Ron. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks for having me on today this afternoon. I appreciate the Huntington Historical Society's support of our book, especially Karen Martin, and of course the town historian Robert Hughes, who've been phenomenal with this book, which it is out in bookstores now. Long Island Freemasons, which covers the history of Long Island-based Freemasons, meaning Suffolk and Nassau, from the East End to far in East Hampton, right through Rockville Center in Nassau County. The Masons in Huntington have been here since 1860, actually 1859, but it's a little convoluted history I'll try to cover with this presentation. So without further ado, I'm going to start the sharing of the screen. Just bear with me here. What's going on now? Of course. Okay, this is the cover of the book, Long Island Freemasons, which came out in March 2020. So my timing wasn't very, very good. The picture you see here on the cover is actually the cornerstone laying ceremony for Jephtha Lodge in Huntington in 1903. I'm actually 1904, I apologize. On the far left-hand side, the man with the straw hat is Douglas Conklin, which I'm sure some of you might recognize the name. He was a past master of Jephtha and also a very active Freemason, which we'll cover a little bit here in this slide presentation. Freemasonry starts several hundred years ago, but American Freemasonry, we have to give credit to Brother George Washington. This is a portrait by Brother Washington that was given to Alexandria Lodge, number 22 in Virginia. Brother Washington was a member of that lodge, and he never liked sitting for portraits. And this was actually painted in 1793. And with this painting, you'll see what's considered one of probably the most accurate representation of George Washington. The painter, William Joseph Williams, did not edit out his smallpox scarred, pockmarked cheeks. the bags under his eye, and the awkward side of his jaw because of many dental issues, a scar on his left cheek, and a mole under his right ear, which you probably can't tell, but actually George Washington was not the perfect figure we recognize on $1 bill. The reason Brother Washington allowed that is because Freemasons consider ourselves on the level. You probably heard that phrase, we're equal. And he felt that for his brothers, for the home lodge, for his mother lodge, he would show himself as he truly was, much like the hero worship the rest of the nation gave him over the years, which I don't think he fully appreciated. Freemasonry actually started on Long Island in 1793 in a lodge called Huntington Lodge number 26. This lodge only lasted about 15 years before folding. And the reason it folded is because members in Huntington Lodge actually came from as far as Port Jefferson and Setauket in the east, and Hempstead in the west. So it'd take a day and a half to go to a meeting. They would actually have a method called the ride and tie method, where two members would start, one on foot and one on horse, and the one walking would have to catch up to the one on a horse, who would tie his horse maybe a mile away. Then he would start walking on foot, and then the walker would catch up, get on the horse, and he'd ride ahead. And that would go on for several hours. And it'd be a very difficult time to actually to actually be at a meeting. So eventually Huntington Lodge did disband by the early 19th century. This is a rare Masonic passport or Masonic certificate from that lodge, which is technically called Huntington Lodge number 26 of Oyster Bay. We do not know where the lodge met. It probably met mostly in Lloyd Neck, but it probably also met as far east as Dix Hills. This is a Masonic apron, which is the badge of a Mason and an emblem of innocence. This Mason is in possession of Glen Cove Lodge in Glen Cove, and it's supposedly worn by Brother George Washington, although we don't have real exact proof of that. When the Masons broke up, when the Huntington Masons dissolved, about 10 Masons started a new lodge in Setauket called Suffolk number 60. And it originally met, the first meeting grounds it met on was at the Blydenburg Inn in Smithtown in 1797. This picture was taken in the late 19th century, so it's probably the most accurate representation of that house or the inn, which still stands today. It was actually remodeled in the 1920s. But this is actually an early meeting place of the Masons in the 1790s of Suffolk 60, which still meets this day in Port Jefferson. The other lodge that broke off from Huntington was Morton Lodge, number 63, which was named after Jacob Morton, who was the Deputy Grand Master of New York State. This is the actual charter of that lodge. It's signed by Jacob Morton, Thomas Carman, Jacob Seaman Jackson, Whitehill Cornwell, and also Governor DeWitt Clinton, who's actually a longtime Freemason. Jacob Morton is instrumental in Freemasonry in New York, or actually in the presidency, because on the day that George Washington was inaugurated as the president, at the very last minute, it turned out that nobody bought a Bible for him to swear on, actually swear his oath of allegiance to the oath of office. So Jacob Morton, a member of a local lodge, ran down to his lodge about 2 blocks away, grabbed the Bible from his lodge and brought it back to Federal Hall, and President Washington swore his oath on the Masonic Bible. Only 4 presidents have used that Bible, the last one being Jimmy Carter. George W. Bush wanted to use that Bible for his second inauguration, but unfortunately it was raining and they couldn't bring it outside. The Bible is still in use at St. John's Lodge number 1 in New York City. Oops, sorry about that. So the Masons in Huntington started in late 1759. A group of brothers, 6 brothers to be exact, formed a pact to create a charter. And they sent a charter application to the Grand Lodge of New York City to form a lodge in Huntington. They were approved within a month. According to Captain John Knight, the 7 charter members of the lodge met on the sloop Rebecca, which was a regatta first place winner in 1858. This sloop was actually moored in Huntington Harbor I think through the winter of 1860. So in January 1860, the 7 brothers, to prepare for the ritual and the Masonic work to study for before they could proceed in opening a lodge, actually met in the sloop for 1 month in the cold winter months before they had their first meeting. During the meetings, Captain Knight, who was not a Mason yet, kept watch for any cowards or trespassers that may disrupt the secret meetings, while keeping a pot of coffee heated in the forecastle of the legendary yacht for the brothers. One of the founding brothers of Jephtha Lodge in Huntington was Jesse Carl, who you might recognize the name as from the Carl shipyards in Northport. Jesse Carl and his brother David Carl were active Freemasons in Huntington and later Northport for many years. David Carl eventually moved to Florida, where he passed away, and Jesse Carl remained in Northport, where he was a very active member at the lodge in Northport for many years. But he is one. The brothers are 2 of the founding members of Jephtha Lodge in Huntington. This image is on the left which was taken in 1863. On the left is a founding member of Jephtha Lodge, which is John Hewlett Jarvis, who came from a lodge in Brooklyn. Brother Jarvis eventually moved to Brooklyn and was dropped from the membership of Jephtha Lodge years later. But Brother Jarvis was the first junior warden, which is kind of like the Secretary of State, essentially, of the lodge. And on the right is his brother, Thomas Jarvis, who also joined the lodge in the first 2 years of the lodge's existence. In the 1960s, their great-great-grandchildren actually donated many items to our lodge. One was this actual Masonic certificate that's hanging in our lodge room now at Jephtha. If you look carefully, there's a discoloration on the it's like an angled discoloration you see in the upper left-hand corner, or left-hand corner of the lodge. When I joined the lodge, this frame was actually exposed to the elements, and you could tell the top portion of the certificate was getting sun drenched. So I took it upon myself to get the frame, get it reframed with the proper UV filter glass. But many lodges have this issue where they really don't take care of their artifacts. And I took it upon myself to later become a appointed historian to preserve all these important artifacts. About 3 years ago, I digitized many of the artifacts at the lodge, including minutes and other important documents. And I donated the digital copies to the Huntington Historical Society. The lodge first met in 1860 on Main Street, and to the right of that in the corner is New Street. This is on the right-hand side of that two-story building, which is the grocery and confectionery store of John Fleet, who was also known as Candy John. The lodge first met here on January 28, 1860, on the second floor, and they remained here until 1885. Then the lodge moved from 1885 until 1905 to a building I'm sure most of you are familiar with, the O.S. Samus building. Many years it was the Gap building in Huntington. If you notice, the third floor of the building, which is the image is taken in late 19th century, is covered with either drapes or wood. I'm not quite sure, but that was the secret meeting of the Masonic Lodge. There is no markings on the outside of the building that state the lodge met there, but our records do show that the lodge met here from 1885 until 1905. I should note that many past masters of the lodge at that point were members of the lodge with O.S. Samus, including Jesse Carl, Douglas Conklin, and Joseph Irwin. Among the many artifacts we found at the lodge were these 3 very, very attractive gavels, which was donated to our lodge in 1886 by a brother traveling from the Honolulu Sandwich Islands. These gavels were made of native woods, each adorned with the master's square, senior warden's level in the middle, and on the right, the junior warden's plum. These are the 3 primary officers of the Masonic Lodge. And then engraved in the inscriptions, Jephtha Lodge, 494, Huntington, Long Island, from Brother A.M. Melius, December 27th, 5886. These gavels were unused. They were stored in our safe for many years. Even though the lodge, you might have heard every brother is equal in the lodge, and the highest degree a Mason can get is really a Master Mason's degree. There's still a system where brothers must be elected to run the actual building, like a trustee or trustees who manage the building itself as the master of the lodge, who runs the lodge itself, not the building, a senior warden who takes care of the widows and orphans, and a junior warden who takes care of the coalition. And there's other officers below that, including a treasury, a secretary, marshal, deacons, and so on and so forth. When a master completes his time in the East, it's a tradition to give that worshipful master a honorary pin to wear for the remainder of his life. Excuse me. This is called the Past Master's Medallion. This medallion is of Brother Jonas Pearsall, which was presented to him on December 24th, 1866. He was a 4-time past master of Jephtha Lodge, and he was a longtime resident of Huntington, Pearsall, and a very successful local tailor. Excuse me. So the lodge was active from 1860 until 1869. But there are many brothers living in Comac in the Northport area that wanted to start a lodge in Northport. So I'm not sure if anybody recognizes this building, but this building is still standing in Northport Village. This is Sani Lodge number 695, which is in Northport Village. Several brothers, we believe about 25 brothers from Jephtha and Huntington, formed this new lodge in Northport. If you look in the main portion of the building, in the middle of the building, the third door from the left, that's the current doorway that goes into the Masonic Lodge in Northport Village. The building still stands, so I'll go forward here. This is what the building looks like today. And the archway doorway, which has changed since then, that is the current lodge room of Northport, or Sani Lodge. So lodges met in this old building from 1875, and they're still meeting there to this day, which makes Sani Lodge the longest used lodge room on Long Island. They've never left this lodge room from 1875 until today. They still meet here in the same room. The room was redecorated about 100 years ago, which we'll show in a few minutes, but it is the exact same location they met for the last 150 years. Here's the lodge, what it looks like more like today. You might recognize some of the images here. This is 1970s, I believe. I think it was when Moy Longy was there. The lodge was rededicated in 1923 and reconstructed when the building was subdivided. This is the inner lodge room, Masonic Lodge room in Sani Lodge in Northport. This is a view of the senior warden station at the west of the lodge room. Sorry. Yeah, okay, this is the senior warden station. So on the right are 2 columns, and in the doorway between the 2 columns is when a new candidate comes in to be initiated into Freemasonry. In front of the senior warden station in the middle, he has a gavel to the right of his station, and in front of him are the masters of ceremonies who actually perform the degree. On the left is where a junior deacon sits, and he keeps the cowens and eavesdroppers from coming into the Masonic Lodge. This is a view of the master station in the east. A master of the lodge is required to wear a hat during lodge meetings of his choice, usually. Traditionally in New York State, it's a top hat. To the right of the master station is a chaplain. Even though a Masonic Lodge is non-denominational, excuse me, which we let any religion coming in, you must believe in a higher power or a divinity. But we don't care what religion you worship. So we accept Christians, Jews, Muslims, Hindu. We really don't care. And we actually have 2 rules in the Masonic Lodge. One, we do not discuss religion, and the other, we do not discuss politics. So believe it or not, when you walk into a lodge room, we all get along. We could come from the far left, the far right, different religions, but we keep those peaks and grudges outside the lodge room, and that's how we remain successful and strive for many years. The desk on the far right is the secretary's desk. The secretary records the minutes for the meetings and takes care of the bills, with the treasurer on the left, the desk on the left, who handles all the billing. This is the view of the altar. Yes, we do have a Bible that's open to certain portions of the Old Testament during a lodge, but if a Muslim was part of the lodge room, we'd actually have a Quran opened up for that brother for the meetings. But most lodges have just the Old Testament because it's easier to take out a large book like that during the meetings. This is a view from the master station in the east. This is the a view of the junior warden station in the west of the lodge. I'm sorry, in the south of the lodge room. His gavel and his warden's stand, which is rarely used today. The warden stand. The warden stand basically means if the warden is standing up, the lodge is in session. When it's lying down, the lodge is now at labor or refreshment. A founding member of Babylon Lodge was Henry Livingston, who was a proprietor and editor of the town's first newspaper, the Suffolk Democrat, in the 1850s. Brother Livingston is a direct descendant of one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence, Philip Livingston. Henry Livingston started the South Side Signal, which was a popular newspaper that garnered public support for formally breaking Babylon away from the town of Huntington. Because of these efforts, Babylon was never again referred to as Huntington South. For many years, Babylon met on the third story of that building in the distance, the Dowden Brothers building on the third floor. That's located in the southeast corner of Main Street and Fire Island Avenue in Babylon Village. They met there from 1876 until about 1910. Okay, I'm not going to cover every town in Huntington. I just want to cover the more towns that might be more interesting to the local residents. This is the Oyster Bay Bank building in Oyster Bay, which was constructed in 1893 on Audrey Avenue. The building is still there. The basement was eliminated and the building was lowered in the 1920s, I believe. But what's important about this building was on the third floor, Masonic Lodge number 806 met there for many years. The second floor in the late 19th century and the early 20th century was the office of the staff of Theodore Roosevelt through his term as president and his term as governor. The bank occupied the first floor, and the basement had a pool hall and tobacco shop. On the third floor was the Masonic Lodge that Theodore Roosevelt eventually joined, and that's a rare image of Theodore Roosevelt as a Freemason. Brother Roosevelt joined the lodge in 1901 upon his exit as governor of New York. Theodore Roosevelt was already elected vice president. He went through his 3 degrees, his first degree when he was an elected vice president, and his last 2 Masonic degrees when he was already sworn in as vice president. This image was actually taken not in Oyster Bay, but in Washington State. Brother Roosevelt is actually dressed as a master of a lodge with the medallion, the hat, the gavel, and a master's apron. He should never be wearing that because he never ran a lodge. He was just a sideliner of a lodge, but he was a very proud Freemason, and he did join the lodge in Oyster Bay. This is the only image we know of the room that Brother Theodore Roosevelt, the room that Theodore Roosevelt was raised as in all 3 of his degrees until his degree as Master Mason. This is a very, very early example of electric candles being used around the altar in the lodge in Oyster Bay. Brother Roosevelt was raised on April 24th, 1901. It was estimated over 500 visitors were present at the function, but only Masons with tickets were allowed to witness the historic event. When Brother Roosevelt went through his 3 degrees, when any Mason goes through his degrees, he must prove to the lodge or brother that he's proficient in the ritual, which includes the passwords, the handshakes, and a coded ritual. Obviously, I can't cover that ritual here in a public meeting, but Brother Roosevelt, when he went from his first and second degree, and most brothers are not perfect at learning the ritual, especially from the first or second degree, because you're learning a whole new language. Brother Roosevelt, it's been rumored, was so proficient in his degree, in his degree work, that when he was tested by 3 elder brothers, including Douglas Conklin of Jephtha Lodge, he froze and he questioned the brothers' accuracy of the ritual, and they double checked the book in the lodge room, and it turns out that Brother Roosevelt knew the work better than his elder Masons. As you might have heard, Theodore Roosevelt was a voracious book reader, and he loved reading books, and he's also I believe he had a photographic memory. So it was no surprise that he was very good in his 3 Masonic degrees. When a Mason is raised to the degree of Master Mason, actually when he gets in his first degree, he's presented with an apron, which is the emblem of innocence and the badge of a Mason. It's made of lambskin, and this apron, when it's presented to a brother, is to be placed on the coffin of his remains after his passing. Most brothers keep it, well hidden. They don't bring the aprons to a lodge meeting after the 3 degrees. They usually use cloth aprons at the lodge rooms themselves. Brother Roosevelt never had a Masonic funeral, because on the funerals, when they actually have a special ceremony with the master of the lodge and a chaplain, Brother Roosevelt never had a Masonic degree when he passed away in 1919. So instead, the apron now resides at in the archives of Sagamore Hill. As I said before, Brother Roosevelt applied as Mason in Oyster Bay when he was governor, but he wasn't really proud of that. So instead, he actually had labeled on his apron Colonel Theodore Roosevelt, and that the date on there, January 2nd, 1901, was the date of his first degree. These are the brothers that were elected to perform the degree for Theodore Roosevelt in 1901. Unfortunately, because it was Theodore Roosevelt and he was elected vice president, grandmasters and past grandmasters, who are brothers who actually run the entire states of Freemasonry from as far as Massachusetts, came down, and the grandmasters actually performed all 3 degrees for Brother Theodore Roosevelt, while the officers who were elected to his lodge were actually the sideliners. I should note the brother in the middle, which is Brother Duthie, whose great-great-grandson is actually a member of our lodge. James Duthie, excuse me, was a member of our lodge. Brother Duthie was actually a gardener of Brother Theodore Roosevelt, or actually a gardener of a neighboring estate of Roosevelt. So Roosevelt was very impressed when he came into a lodge, and he actually had to pay respect to the gardener of his next door estate. It didn't matter to him, though. He actually appreciated that. So Masons take all kinds of occupants to join. This is the Masonic Bible that Theodore Roosevelt swore his degrees on, the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd degrees. It was damaged pretty badly in a fire in 2003. I believe they are looking to get this restored somehow. It is a very, very large Bible, but this is called the TR Bible in Oyster Bay, or the Theodore Roosevelt Bible. This is the grave of Theodore Roosevelt soon after he passed away in 1919. Every year, in honor of the raising of Theodore Roosevelt's 3 Masonic degrees, Masons get together at his gravesite, including the Knights Templar, which are the brothers in the funny-looking hats, and also the brothers in the white jackets are the Masonic war veterans. All veterans are actually military personnel who are retired or active. They perform a special service at Brother Roosevelt's gravesite every year. This is a lodge, what it kind of looks like today, which is McTennacock Lodge in Oyster Bay. About in the 20s, this stained glass window was actually constructed. It's called the Theodore Roosevelt Memorial Window. It was dedicated in 1926 to honor the 25th anniversary of Roosevelt's raising as a Master Mason. Originally installed behind the Master Station in the east, the window was designed and built by the local artisan Oliver Smith in his Oyster Bay garage, as well as the stained glass windows of Christ Church in Oyster Bay. The window depicts a fully armored knight standing on an escalated rock, his flag furled, his sword sheathed, signifying peace with honor, but stands at the ready for the battle to the enemies of righteousness. The inscription reads Theodore Roosevelt 1901 to 1919, the years of his time as a brother. And it stands between 2 presidential eagles. The window was severely damaged in the fire in 2003, and the surviving pieces were restored with newly fabricated stained glass and installed a light box in the lodge, which still stands today. This is the way the window looked originally prior to the fire behind the Master Station in the east. This is prior to the fire in Oyster Bay. Unfortunately, this all burned down. Here's the image of the fire in Oyster Bay Lodge in 2003. After the lodge was burnt down, they were actually able to rebuild. A lodge in Buffalo donated or actually loaned the Masonic Lodge his handcrafted white oak furniture from a lodge in Buffalo, which couldn't use it anymore because they moved to a small location. That station east actually stands about 19 feet tall. This is the senior warden station on the west, and above him is the library in Oyster Bay, the Masonic Library in Oyster Bay. This is the junior warden station. This is the altar. These are very rare chairs for past masters to sit in during a meeting. You can tell the past master's chair by the emblems in the peak in the middle of the chair, which signifies a square and compass, but with a sun between the square and compass, which shows that the master has received light to be master of the lodge. Originally, the furniture belonged to Ancient Landmark Lodge. That's what the AL stands for, Ancient Landmark, number 444 in Buffalo. This is an aerial view of the lodge. You'll see the stained glass window on the left-hand side. This is how the furniture looked in Buffalo. If you notice, there's actually a lamb above the station, the center in the center point at the top of the altar there, on the top of the roof there. Apparently, that lamb is currently in a garage in Buffalo, falling apart. I've been trying to get it down here for years, but no luck, unfortunately. Might be in Canada, actually. That's the lodge in Buffalo, who donated the furniture. So for many years, from the early 20th century to the mid 20th century, many postcards were printed with Masonic lodges. So I'll go through a few here right now. Right now, this is the lodge in Islip, New York on Main Street. This lodge was sold about, I want to say 10 years ago. It's now, I believe, a co-op on Main Street. This is the lodge in Amityville. I forget the actual street the Amityville Lodge is on. But they still meet there since 1929. This is the lodge, one of the lodges in East Hampton. This lodge also burned down, and they had to move from this location. This is a lodge in Great Neck, Masonic Lodge. You can tell it's a very Roman Greco formula they have, which is part of the Masonic degree in terms of the columns and how the building is erected. This is the Masonic Lodge in Floral Park. This lodge was sold a few years ago to the town, and I believe now it's being reconstructed as also a co-op. But lodges also do not buy their own buildings. They actually rent out other locations. For years, Lynbrook Lodge met above the Lynbrook movie theater. Unfortunately, I don't have a better picture of the lodge, but as an example that they actually met on the third floor of a movie theater in the 1940s. And this is the early location of Masonic Lodge, then the third floor of the Rockville Center Bank, or the Bank of Rockville Center. This building was torn down. Masonic Lodge now currently meets somewhere else in Rockville Center. And this is a lodge in Westbury, which is currently, I believe, a church now. This building is still being used today in Rockville Center. Looks a little different from the front. It was originally the Rockville Center Club. Many lodges meet here in Nassau County, including Lynbrook Masonic Lodge. This is the Masonic Temple in Greenport in the foreground. This lodge was sold about 15 years ago. I believe now it's an antique dealership. Unfortunately, when they sold it, the second floor lodge room, I believe the fresco paintings on the walls were painted over. The paintings, this is one of the last meetings I had before it's painted over. They depict the building of King Solomon's Temple, which is part of the ritual of Freemasonry. It's adorned throughout the entire, was adorned around the entire lodge room in Greenport, Long Island. This is the senior warden station in the west, which depicts the three Masonic graces: faith, hope, and charity, which are the three moral principles of Freemasonry. Two are holding an important tool of operative and speculative Masons, which is the square and the level. It's another image of the Greenport Lodge. This is the lodge in Long Beach when it was during construction in the mid 1920s. The building is still there. I don't have an old picture of the building, unfortunately. This is the cornerstone laying ceremony in 1928. But during my research for this book, I found an interesting artifact. It was totally word of mouth, and I couldn't believe it when I went to the location of the building now. The lodge was sold, this lodge building was sold in 1977 or 78 to a Jewish community center, which it has been a Jewish community center for many years, for the last 40 plus years. So it's mostly a daycare center for young children, pre-kindergarten or preschool kids. But they allowed me to take pictures of the magnificent Masonic dome that's in the main gym area of this room right now, of this building. This is a very large Masonic dome. I'll give you a perspective. This is myself on the left, and our photographer, Drew McCullum, on the right. It's about 30 feet in circumference. It's about 15 feet from the floor to the bottom of the dome. It really is an impressive dome, and it's all Masonic symbols. There are, I think, 18 panels, all open from the inside. It's not an outdoor dome. It's actually protected from the elements, from the because it's actually in a room on the second floor of the building. But only kids look at this dome now, only little kids. When I was there taking these pictures, one child, I think maybe she was 6 years old, she actually asked the question, "Are you with the Illuminati?" And I said, "No, I am not. I'm not. They don't return our phone calls." This is a view of the original master's floor, actually the lodge floor. As you notice, it's all kid cubbies there, conversations for the kids, but the Masonic tile ware is still in place since 1920s, and the floor is still the same. It hasn't been changed. But it was a Masonic lodge for many years until they couldn't afford to pay the real estate tax. There's a close-up of that tile floor. I should point out that Freemasons do not get a break on real estate tax. We are, some people think we're a religion. We're not. We do not get exempt by any nonprofit exemption for any real estate tax. We pay the full tax bill, and because of that, many lodges have been lost. The lodge in Huntington and in Northport and one in Southampton were the only lodges designed to actually have first floor retail spaces to actually cover the income for the rest of the building, which was actually very wise to do. Most lodges just built structures, standalone structures for just the Masons. And of course, within a few years, when taxes were skyrocketing, they couldn't afford to keep the buildings. So these are artifacts being lost. Here's some close-ups of the stained glass window. The dome with different Masonic symbols. And here's an image of the dome, what it looks like from a room above where inside the second floor. It's actually a very large attic space. And only one piece of glass is missing, that little piece. Actually, in excellent condition. The light was being thrown from the ballast lighting that's hanging on a wire over the dome itself. And there are doorknobs everywhere in the building with Masonic symbols. As Drew again, give you a good perspective of what the dome looks like, how the size of the dome to a human. This is the lodge in Huntington Village, Jephtha Lodge, the third floor lodge room. I'm sure Stephanie recognizes the room. This image is taken after 1917 and probably before 1925. The room looks relatively the same. Most of the furniture is still in place. The only thing that's changed really is the ceiling, which collapsed, unfortunately, in the early 1990s. And for some reason, the trustees back then dropped the ceiling about 2 feet. So it's actually a lower ceiling now, unfortunately. One of my, just unfortunately, they lowered that and didn't return a tin ceiling. This is the room adjacent to our lodge room in Huntington, which is now a museum. I should give you an idea how old the inside of the rooms look. So when I joined the lodge in 2003 and became more active within a couple of years, I would go through this room here, and there were tons of artifacts. Nobody was taking care of them. Nothing was cataloged. They were strewn about the entire room. And I found this large framed picture. And I didn't know what it was. It was pretty nondescript. Nobody labeled it. And I just put it away because it didn't look very exciting or interesting. So one day when I was writing my book, a brother in Sag Harbor sent me a large file. And the file was this little article here. And it says, Governor Roosevelt at Jephtha. And I was stunned. I recognized that picture. So I ran back to the lodge and I found this framed picture. This is the framed picture I originally uncovered. And lo and behold, right there, behind the altar is Brother Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who's invited to Jephtha Lodge in 1932 to give a speech on the anniversary of the signing of the U.S. Constitution. Every person in that room is actually a Masonic brother. And FDR entered that room on his own two legs and was escorted up the ramp on the left-hand side that the brothers made. This is the old First Presbyterian Church, which is across from Town Hall in Huntington. Here's a cleaner image of Brother Roosevelt, as you notice on the second from the left. This is the only known picture of Theodore Roosevelt at a Masonic meeting in Huntington, New York. Actually, or I believe in Huntington, New York, from 1932. This is the invitation when Brother Roosevelt joined the lodge. But FDR and Theodore Roosevelt are not the only famous Masons. Locally, we had Fayette Gould, who was a machinist, a watchmaker, jeweler in the Empire Block on Main Street, also the Huntington postmaster, and also a member of the Huntington Fire Department. Actually, one of the founders of the fire department. He was a past master of the lodge, and he also held about 5 different patents, which I discovered recently in Scientific America. He's a brother of our lodge in Jephtha in Huntington. Another brother is William D. Woodend. Some of you might recognize the image. The painting is hanging currently in the Huntington Historical Society. Brother Warden was a physician who was educated in Pennsylvania, active in the Democratic Party for many years, was also part of the Huntington School Board and a deacon of the Second Presbyterian Church. But he actually passed away, believe it or not, on March 8th, 1893 at Washington, D.C., where he attended the inauguration of President Grover Cleveland's inauguration. Another famous local Huntington resident is Robert Toaz. You might know Robert Toaz as the first superintendent of the district in Huntington until 1933, and also director of the Bank of Huntington. But more famously, one of the first middle schools in Huntington was named after Brother Toaz. Later on, it became the home of the Torah Law School. He was a past master of the lodge, as were both of his sons. Other famous Freemasons locally was Chief Crazy Bull, which is the grandson of the famous Sioux Chief Sitting Bull. This brother was a member of a lodge in Port Jefferson. He was actually known as William Jacobs. He was born in the Crow Creek Reservation, South Dakota, educated in Kansas and Yale University, and was a World War I veteran. And he actually taught schools for many years in the Port Jeff area. I believe physical education. Also Freemason and local Freemason. Another famous Freemason is Brother Jerry Tucker. He's the little kid there holding the money bag on the left behind Spanky McFarland from the Little Rascals. He's a member of Amityville Lodge, or he was a member of, Jerry Tucker was a member of the lodge. He also appeared in 2 shorts with Charlie Temple and a few radio series in the 1940s. There's Brother Schatz again, standing to the left. The tall kid on the left. Brother Schatz served in the U.S. Navy during World War II and the Korean War, and was awarded the Purple Heart. He was a member of Amityville Lodge until his passing a few years ago. There are many different Masonic ceremonies that take place, including laying of cornerstones. This is a cornerstone laying in Baldwin Lodge. I bring this image up because this is the only Masonic lodge in Nassau County that is actually owned by a Masonic lodge. This is the altar in the lodge in Baldwin. One lodge in Freeport burned down, unfortunately. And what's left of that lodge is the cornerstone. You can see this cornerstone right outside the Freeport Historical Society. I forget what the actual address was, but this cornerstone was from the Freeport Lodge that burned down in 1978. Quickly going back to Floral Park Lodge, which was sold about 10 years ago. I'll give you an idea of what takes place in many Masonic lodges. They have assembly rooms for banquets or for plays or musicals. This is converted seats. This is the lodge in Floral Park and the different lounge areas. These images date back to the 1920s, I believe. Pool rooms, billiard rooms, collation rooms, full functioning kitchens, and the lodge itself. There are many Masonic aprons also, including this, which is the Pominock Port Washington apron. This is an elaborate apron from Port Washington, which hand painted of mixed materials, including leather and silk. Based on this design, this Blue Lodge apron dates to the early 19th century. Many early Masonic aprons are fine works of art, stemming from an intimate collaboration between the Mason and the artists, who were either non-Masons or women. This is the Royal Arch apron of Masonry, which is a white silk tripped with red bearing, which is faded, on a mosaic pavement, approached by 7 steps, a stone altar with 3 great lights and a radiant, all-seeing eye above the clouds, which you're probably familiar with in masonry imagery. This is also in the Pomarock Port Washington Lodge. This lodge is in Sag Harbor, which is embroidered silk on velvet. This is from 1890, and it's in the archives on Pomarock Lodge number 437 in Sag Harbor. This is a image, it's the lodge seal, which shows an Indian paddling his canoe while Pomaron, or in the English translation, to the east. There are many other bodies at Freemasonry. You don't stop at the third degree. You can join other bodies, including the Knights Templar, who used to be just Christians, but actually other brothers who join who are non-Christian. We don't really look upon the denomination. The Shriners. Let me get a good image of the Shriners here. No good images. So the Shriners are the guys with the funny fez caps, who drive the big guys who drive the little cars in the parades, and also the Shriners hospitals all over across the country. Shriners to be a Shriner, you must be a Freemason. You must go to the 3 degrees of Freemasonry. There are many Shriner hospitals, and their goal is to pay for, originally for children who were burn victims, and it actually has expanded since then. But they pay for all the care for kids, and many of them who are also called jesters, or they dress in clown outfits. They actually drive the kids from their homes to the hospital for the treatment. It could be 3, 4, 5 hours away between the home and the hospital. The nearest Shriner hospital to us is in Philadelphia. I think there's one in Boston too. This is an old Shriner pamphlet from 1921. This is the Masonic Lodge in Huntington. This is the old Eastern Star group. This is a close-up of the lodge room in Huntington. Eastern Star was a woman's concordant body. They also have their own rituals. And many of these women are wives or daughters of Freemasons in Huntington Lodge. This is the lodge room in Smithtown, set up for an Eastern Star or the Women's Concordant Body meetings. This is a Royal Arch meeting in Nassau County. Once again, another organization. These are the Scottish Rite. You might have heard the phrase 32nd degree or 33rd degree. They're additional educational degrees in Freemasonry. Once again, your highest degree is the 3rd degree. Really, the degrees 4 through 32 are learned degrees or educational degrees. They're not really a part of a rank. We also have youth organizations like the Demolay. This is an early image of the Demolay in the Southampton Lodge from the late 1940s. And this is the Jephtha Lodge Truth Triangle group. Young girls ages 11 through 21, if I'm correct. I'm sure if Jennifer's watching this, she'll correct me. They've been meeting in our lodge since 1927. They're the 2nd oldest Truth Triangle group in New York State. And they're still meeting, they're still very, very active. And many of these girls, their fathers, grandfathers, or uncles are Freemasons. This is the image of the Masonic War Vets of Long Island. They first were created in the mid-50s. And these are all veterans, doesn't have to be for war, it could be any military branch. But they actually present the colors at most important Masonic functions. And they treat the flag with dignity and respect. And we, of course, honor them for coming out in their spare time in the meetings. There are also square clubs, many square clubs, which are mostly based around professions. This is the Long Island Railroad Square Club, and they wear these funny little fez caps. But these are all Freemasons who actually started a square club based on their profession. They're also medical, attorneys, square clubs, digital square clubs. There actually was a Grumman Square Club for many years. But this is the only image I could find, which is the Long Island Railroad Square Club. Another artifact I discovered in our lodge in Jephtha, which was a painting by Gerard Francis Tempest. Once again, I have no idea where the painting came from. It took me some time to research it. I took an image, I found some information online, and it turns out this was actually painted by the Italian board Gerard Tempest, who was a painter, sculptor, and architect and veteran of World War II. He is considered the father of abstract spiritualism and a protege of Giorgio di Chirico, the forerunner of surrealism. He received a gold medal at the Cannes Art Festival in 1987 and was honored by the Holy See in having his work becoming part of the permanent collection of the Vatican in 1982 and 1990. Once again, I'm not sure how this got into our lodge, but it's there. and his children have confirmed this is definitely his painting. So I'm still actually researching this painting, where it came from. But it is a Masonic-based painting. It shows another angle of the building of King Solomon's Temple. Masons also rent out their lodge rooms for other functions, like a play for fundraisers. This is the Peak Sisters, a part of the Cold Spring Harbor Methodist Church in 1927. Not sure what the play is about, but this was some kind of musical play for a fundraiser for the actual Methodist Church. Another image, thanks to Karen Martin, I discovered in the archives of our local wonderful historical society, was this image in our Masonic Lodge room. One of the oddest images I've ever seen in a Freemason lodge room. This is probably from between 1917 and 1925. I could tell by how the artifacts are hanging on the wall. But this is a play of some kind of cross-dressing group. I have no idea what this is, to be completely honest to you. I always show it. Hopefully somebody can tell me what it is. But it actually was a play that took place in our lodge room, non-Masonic. It was just rented out, because our lodge room was rented out to many different organizations, including the Moose, the Elks, Knights of Columbus, Arcanium, many different fraternal organizations rented our building out for many years. And this is one time they rented out, but I have no idea where this came from. Fascinating image to me. This concludes my presentation. I hope you enjoy it, and please stick around for any questions you might have. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Ron. There was a question in the chat from Catherine. She said, what is studied to advance in degrees? Is it only related to the Masonic rituals, or does other learning take place? I don't know.
Sorry.
In order to advance in your degrees with the Masons, are there any particular,
degrees? It's a good question. The degrees are based on, I'm not sure you can see my face right now, so I'm just looking at the camera, but the degrees are based on a Masonic ritual, the building of King Solomon's Temple. They are in code. There's no extra learning to be done. The only thing is you have to basically learn the code. You do go through the degree. Through a process that the brothers do take care of you throughout every step of the degree. And to pass to the next degree or next 2 degrees, you must show proficiency in the ritual. It's not religious whatsoever. It's a fraternal degree. It's not violent. There are no weapons involved. There's no sharp objects or anything like that. But basically, it's definitely a test of your willpower or your will to advance into the degree. And of course, not everybody can learn the ritual in a short period of time. Some take a longer time than others. So there's no deadline like a test or a diploma. We're very patient with the brothers or members coming up.
Someone else was asking questions. What do the Freemasons do? That was one question. And what is the difference of numbers of the members from today as in years past? I know I had asked you that in the beginning. So
yes.
Those are 2 questions that's popped up. One was, what do the Masons act? What do they do? And then how is the membership different over the years?
The Masons, they are a fraternal organization. We do raise funds for charity. Our lodge in Jephtha, we're actually very active. My book proceeds, my net proceeds for my book actually went to feeding homeless veterans in a location in West Islip. Sorry, excuse my mind where it was. In West Islip, we actually covered their meals for a few visits there. We also raised money for Sunrise Day Camp in Wyandanch, but it actually goes around the country. And it's a fantastic day camp that one of our brother's daughter went through a couple of years ago. It's to fund children with cancer to actually have a normal experience at a camp. And it doesn't matter what level of cancer they have, what phase they're at. It also funds their siblings to go with them. So we actually funded 2 kids last year to experience just have a great time at the day camp in Wyandanch. It's a fantastic camp. It's a typical day camp we all grew up with, but it's only limited to kids with cancer. Shriners Hospital is another one. We do have a cardiac research center in Grand Lodge, New York, upstate New York. We do research on different medical research. We have laboratories upstate. When the Twin Towers went down, it was Freemasons that started the first 9/11 fund that day. And I think they raised about $1 million within 24 hours. before even advertising, just the Freemasons, donating money to that. So we primarily have fundraisers. Our lodge in Jephtha and Huntington is very fortunate because of our rentals, we're able to actually have other parties. So we have a big St. Patrick's Day party and Diwali and the holiday party. We have when the parades go in front of our building. We have the bird's eye view of the parade. So we're fortunate. We actually have a lot of different social events. Not every lodge is as fortunate. They actually have to raise money to pay the real estate tax. I always laugh at people telling me that Masons control the world. And if they did, I wish we can cover our taxes.
I have other questions, Ron. This is a hot topic, the Masons. So another person asks, are there any rituals that offend the Catholic Church? Because there is always that myth church is unhappy with the Masons, because I've heard that before.
So go ahead.
And then, so you said no, there's nothing that is.
I was raised a Catholic. Nothing there offends a Catholic. We as a matter of fact, part of the ritual in all 3 degrees, it's to explain to the candidates and to the brothers in the room not to ignore your current denomination. That comes before Freemasonry. Freemasonry is the last on your list. It's really family, work, your religion, whatever your worship is. Like I said, we don't care. We do not take away from any religion whatsoever. As a matter of fact, it's not really a hidden secret there, but there actually are 2 Masonic lodges in the Vatican. They've been there for many years. The Catholic Church started the Knights of Columbus because they wanted to have an organization, a fraternal organization for men, to counteract the popularity of Freemasonry in the late 19th century. I should also add, when you mentioned the other question about how Masonry's membership went up, their peak years were post-war years, Civil War, both World Wars. It went down during the Vietnam War. The peak year in America, in the United States, was probably in the early 60s, late 50s, early 60s. I don't know members. I'm not sure how many members New York State had, but our lodge had almost 700 members at that time. Now we have about, I think, 180. Our members are down to.
Some other questions were, what are the dues, if there are any, and then do you have to be invited to join the lodge?
Dues depends on the lodge itself. A third of the dues goes to the Grand Lodge of New York. I should explain, Freemasonry, there's no central world place. There's no Vatican type location or a Jerusalem type location where we must answer to a higher power. We're controlled by, or we're managed by, our state lodge or states lodges. So every state has their own Grand Lodge. We recognize other state lodges or other nation lodges, but we answer to the Grand Lodge of New York, which meets in Manhattan. I'm sorry.
The other questions, do you have to be invited to join?
No, you don't have to be. In the old days, yes. And then the problem happened where older members didn't want to go through the work of learning ritual, I guess, and didn't invite members. Membership started dying off, and then nobody cared. Membership went downhill. When I joined my lodge in Huntington, I'm not exaggerating. There were about 7 members in the meeting, all older. They don't want to talk to me. That's changed. Now we have actively, even during the pandemic, when we're allowed to meet, upwards of 40 members in a meeting. And the 40 members range in age from 21 until 81. I'm not exaggerating. And unlike when you walk into a lodge, if you're a non-brother or a non-member, we go out of our way to introduce ourselves. Somebody will introduce ourselves and get to know you. We also do not look to push you in the lodge. We don't pressure you. We actually encourage you to come to our parties, like a St. Patty's Day or Diwali or Christmas, whatever. Just spend time with us for about a year and see what you want. And we also meet with your wife or girlfriend, and to make sure they're on board with this too, because we don't want any friction in your family life. As for dues, so in New York State, a third of your dues goes per capita to the Grand Lodge. The other 2/3 goes to cover expenses in our lodge. Every lodge has different dues. Our lodge is, I think, $160 right now per year, $160. Other lodges go as high as $500 or more. There's actually a lodge in New York that's $10,000, I think. That's the Millionaire Lodge. So it depends. It really depends on the lodge itself. But there are dues. There's also an application fee. But if you get rejected, you get that fee returned back to you. We rarely reject people, but we do not accept people who have been convicted of a felony. If we do a check, and if you're a felon, we won't let you in.
All right, there's two other questions that I'm scanning through it. One is, the number 3 have any significance, like the 3rd floor, the 3rd degree? And then people are asking, if they purchase your book, will you sign them? Those are the things.
Of course I will. I will sign the books, of course. As for the 3, yes or no, I really can't go too much in that response. Yes, there is a partial significance to number 3 in certain stages of the Masonic process. I really can't cover that here.
Okay. Right. And just so you know that Ron's book is $24.99. I did put 2 links because some people prefer to go right to the publisher, and there was also Amazon. Ron had also told me that Barnes & Noble is selling his book. And, we could even order it if you wanted the society, if you wanted it to be signed. Ron has some books, and he can sign them, and you could pick them up here as well.
I'm local. I can always drop by. I have some books. Unfortunately, my book was published, I'm not exaggerating, the week of the lockdown, March 2020. So all my promotion ended overnight. I had a lot of events planned, and I got stuck with some books here. Not lie, I got rid of a lot of the books, but still, it was a challenge, to say the least.
All right, one last question, I think from Betty that I saw. I heard that after 9/11, the Bible was taken from the Federal Hall display back to St. John's. I also heard that it was once displayed at Francis Tavern. That's
yes. Yes. So that Bible, which is the St. John's Bible #1, is actually owned by that Masonic Lodge. When that Bible is requested for a ceremony, which is usually only for the President of the United States, like I said before, Jimmy Carter was the last president to actually use it. It must be escorted by 2 brothers of that lodge, so they don't leave its sight, that Bible. And they escort from point A to point B. They're next to the Bible during the ceremony. They don't trust anybody with that Bible because it's the George Washington Bible. The pages he used for his inauguration is preserved, I believe, with I might forget the type of material used, but something preserved. And I believe Brother Washington signed the Bible as well. But yes, it's been loaned out to Federal Hall and the Tavern too. Yes, it has been.
Okay, and there's still another question. This is the most questions I've had since I've had these lunch and learns since I've started, which is great. Do you provide information about members to relatives researching for their ancestors if they were?
Yeah. If you think a brother or a member, your father, grandfather, whomever might have been a member, you can email us through our website, jephtha.com, or through Facebook. I'm the one or even call us, and I'm the one who usually gets those messages first, and I will respond. If we can't find your relative in our lodge, I would recommend going to the Grand Lodge of New York, and they have an extensive database to cover other lodges. Because when members join lodges, it doesn't mean it was a lodge near their home. It could be a lodge near where they worked. So it's also part of the equation where their home lodge was.
All right. Well, I think we've run out of time. I know Ron has to do things as well. Some other people may have to get back to work. I just want to say thank you so much, one, for taking the time and also to answer all the questions. Obviously, it's very fascinating to our membership. I want to thank again our members for donating and for coming to the Lunch and Learns, and again to People's United Bank for sponsoring us, each month for these. And we will maybe having in-person one. I will posting on the website for February on the Crippen House, and we'll be hearing more about that.